I was 30 seconds from closing the library when I heard it. A small sniffle from between the stacks. Not crying exactly. More like the careful control of someone trying very hard not to. Following the sound, I found him hiding in the children's section. A small boy with dark hair and eyes too serious for his age. "The library's closing," I said softly, kneeling to his level. My student ID badge still hung around my neck. Emma Walsh, Junior, Literature Department, and his eyes fixed on it immediately. "Are you lost?" The question hung between us, and for a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. "I can't find my way home," he finally whispered, his accent slight but noticeable. "Dad's going to be so angry." He clutched a battered copy of The Little Prince against his chest like armor, knuckles white with the effort of appearing brave. I should have called security or the police. That would have been the sensible thing, the safe thing, but something in those solemn eyes stopped me, a wariness that seemed impossibly old in a child's face. "I'm Mia," I offered, instead of the question spinning through my mind. "Leo," he replied, relaxing slightly at my smile. I was supposed to wait for Anton by the fountain, but he didn't come, and I tried to find my way back. But everything looks different now. His voice trembled slightly, the first real crack in his composure. Rain had started outside, tapping against the library's tall windows like impatient fingers. My apartment was 6 blocks away. My shift ended, and my roommate was expecting me for dinner. But I couldn't leave him here alone. This small boy with careful eyes who spoke too formally for a child. "Do you remember your address?" I asked, already calculating how I might get him home safely. Most children his age would have been taught their phone number, their address, the basics for exactly this kind of situation. Not Leo, apparently. "Oakwood Drive," he said, brightening slightly. "The big house at the end with the stone lions." His description was vague, but better than nothing. Oakwood Drive was in the wealthy district across town, old money and new mansions looking down on the university from the hillside. I made a quick decision that would change everything that came after. "I'll help you get home," I said, offering my hand. Leo took it without hesitation, his small fingers wrapping around mine with surprising strength. "But you'll have to help me navigate once we get to your neighborhood." The library doors closed behind us with a heavy finality as we stepped into the rain. Leo moved closer to my side, seeking shelter under my umbrella. I didn't know then that I was walking straight into the most dangerous situation of my life, led by a 7-year-old boy who carried more secrets than I could imagine. "My dad doesn't like strangers," Leo warned as we waited for the bus, water dripping from my umbrella onto the sidewalk. "But I think he'll like you because you're helping me." The certainty in his voice was touching, if misplaced. I had no idea who his father was, or how he'd react to a stranger bringing his son home. The bus ride took 20 minutes, climbing steadily uphill away from the university district. Leo pressed his face against the window, pointing occasionally at landmarks only he recognized. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time we stepped off at the Oakwood Drive stop. "This way," Leo said with newfound confidence, tugging me forward. The neighborhood was exactly what I'd expected. Massive homes set back from the street, each with its own distinct architectural personality. Some modern and angular, others classic and imposing. A black SUV crawled past us, slow enough to make the hairs on my neck stand up. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see who was watching us. Leo didn't seem to notice, too focused on finding familiar territory in the gathering twilight. "That's Mrs. Petrov's garden," he announced, pointing to an elaborate rose display behind wrought iron gates. "She gives me cookies sometimes when Dad has meetings." There was something in the way he said meetings that seemed rehearsed, as if he'd been taught exactly how to describe his father's business. We turned a corner, and Leo stopped abruptly. "That's our house," he whispered, suddenly seeming afraid again. At the end of a cul-de-sac stood the largest home I'd seen yet, stone and glass and clean lines, with a circular driveway where 3 black cars were parked haphazardly. 2 men in dark suits stood by the front door, their posture alert despite the casual way they leaned against the stonework. Security, my mind supplied, though they looked more like the bouncers at exclusive clubs than typical household staff. What kind of family needed that level of protection? As we approached, one of the men spotted us, said something into what looked like a communication device on his wrist. The front door flew open before we reached the steps. A woman rushed out, beautiful, elegant, clearly not Leo's mother based on her reaction. "Leonardo," she exclaimed, relief washing over her features. "Where have you been? Your father has half the city looking for you." She knelt, hands fluttering over him as if checking for injuries, then looked up at me with sudden suspicion. "Who are you?" Before I could answer, another figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my entire education. His face was all angles, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, dark eyes that assessed everything in seconds. Leo's father, unmistakably, from the matching set of their features. "She helped me get home," Leo explained quickly, as if afraid I'd be sent away before he could make introductions. "This is Mia. She works at the library." The man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, a calculation being made. "David Alexandrov," he said finally, extending his hand. His grip was firm, controlled, like everything else about him seemed to be. "Please, come inside. It seems I owe you a debt of gratitude." His accent was more pronounced than his son's, Eastern European perhaps, smooth and cultured. I should have made an excuse and left, should have recognized the danger in those dark, assessing eyes. But the rain had started again, heavier now, and Leo was looking up at me with such hopeful expectation. So I stepped over the threshold, into a world I didn't understand, following a lost boy who had inadvertently led me straight to the wolf's den. The interior of the Alexandrov home was exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like it at all. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, artwork that belonged in museums, but there were children's drawings framed alongside Renaissance paintings, and a well-worn couch in the otherwise immaculate living room. "Leo, go upstairs with Irina and get cleaned up for dinner," David instructed, his tone gentle but brooking no argument. Leo hesitated, looking between his father and me with uncertainty, before the woman, Irina, gently guided him toward the grand staircase. "You found him at the library?" David asked once Leo was out of earshot, gesturing for me to sit in what was clearly his study. The room smelled of leather and expensive cologne, walls lined with books in multiple languages, many with Cyrillic titles I couldn't read. A man appeared with 2 glasses of amber liquid without being called. He set them down silently, then vanished as quickly as he'd come. David pushed one toward me. Not a question, but not quite a command either. "Leo's mother died when he was 3. Since then, it's been difficult to..." He said someone named Anton was supposed to meet him, I offered when his voice trailed off. David's expression hardened, something cold and calculating replacing the carefully maintained facade of grateful father. I felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. Anton was Leo's bodyguard, was being the operative word. He took a measured sip of his drink, watching me over the rim of the crystal glass. "I don't tolerate failure, especially when it comes to my son's safety." Something in his phrasing made me uneasy. The calm certainty, the implied consequence. I suddenly wondered what happened to people who failed David Alexandrov, then immediately wished I hadn't. Some questions were safer left unasked. "You're a student?" he asked, changing the subject so smoothly it took me a moment to adjust. His eyes flicked to my university ID, which I'd forgotten to remove. "Literature, I see. Leo loves to read, gets lost in books, sometimes literally." The joke didn't reach his eyes, which remained calculating, assessing me like I was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "I should go," I said, setting down the untouched drink. "My roommate will be worried, and I have an early class tomorrow." "Of course," David agreed with a smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, almost approachable. "But first, let me make you an offer. Leo needs a tutor. English literature, writing, the things you study. He's struggled since his mother passed." Before I could form a response, a commotion erupted in the hallway. A man burst in without knocking, stopped short when he saw me. He whispered something urgent in David's ear in what sounded like Russian. David's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, coiled tension, barely contained. "Forgive the interruption," David said smoothly, rising to his feet. "Business that requires my attention. Please, finish your drink." He left with the messenger, the door closing behind them with a soft click that somehow sounded final. I waited exactly 3 minutes before setting down my still untouched drink and moving to the door. Voices filtered through from somewhere deeper in the house, angry, urgent, still in that language I couldn't understand. My instincts screamed to leave while I could. Just as I reached for the doorknob, it turned from the other side. I stepped back quickly as Leo slipped into the room in Superman pajamas, hair damp from his bath. "Are you going to be my new teacher?" he asked hopefully. "I don't think so, Leo," I said gently, kneeling to his level. "I'm still a student myself, and I have classes and a job at the library." His face fell, and I felt an unexpected pang of guilt. But maybe I could help you find your way around the library sometime. A crash from somewhere in the house made us both jump. Leo didn't look surprised, just resigned, like unexpected violence was something he'd grown accustomed to. That, more than anything else, made my decision for me. Actually, I heard myself say, I could probably help you with reading and writing a few afternoons a week. The smile that lit up his face made me momentarily forget all the warning signs I'd been carefully ignoring. This was about a child who needed help, not whatever business his father conducted. David returned 20 minutes later, his composure perfect except for a small crease between his eyebrows. If he was surprised to find Leo curled against my side as I read from The Little Prince, he didn't show it. He simply watched us from the doorway, something unreadable in his expression. Leo tells me you've agreed to be his tutor, he said, after sending his son reluctantly to bed. I'm pleased. He named a figure that made my eyes widen, more than triple what I made at the library for a fraction of the hours. Plus transportation, of course. I'll send a car. I wanted to refuse the extravagance, to maintain some sense of independence. But the reality of my student loans and shared apartment with 3 other girls made pragmatism win out over pride. 3 afternoons a week, I agreed. And I'll need a contract. The smile he gave me then was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time. Smart girl, he said approvingly. I'll have papers drawn up for your review. Victor will drive you home tonight and pick you up on Wednesday at 4. The man who drove me home in a sleek black Audi said exactly 3 words the entire journey. We're here, miss. But his eyes constantly scanned the streets, one hand always near his jacket. It wasn't until we reached my rundown apartment building that I finally acknowledged what I'd been avoiding all night. 3 weeks passed in a strange new routine. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons found me at the Alexandrov mansion, working with Leo in the sunlit conservatory while men in dark suits prowled the grounds. David was rarely home during our sessions, a fact that brought both relief and a curious disappointment. You're good with him, Irina commented one afternoon, bringing us lemonade. I'd learned she was the housekeeper, though she carried herself with the authority of someone much higher in the household hierarchy. He hasn't had nightmares since you started coming. I looked up from the story Leo was writing, a tale about a boy with a dragon for a pet, and smiled. He's brilliant. His vocabulary is advanced for his age, and his imagination is incredible. What I didn't say was how much I'd grown to care for this solemn child with old eyes. The bubble burst on a rainy Friday afternoon as I waited for Victor to pick me up from campus. My phone buzzed with a news alert, a habit I'd developed in my journalism elective. The headline made my blood freeze. Suspected mob boss evades prosecution again. DA cites missing witnesses. I almost dropped my phone when I saw the grainy surveillance photo accompanying the article. David Alexandrov, entering a courthouse with an army of lawyers. The article called him the suspected head of the Solntsevskaya Brotherhood's American operations, whatever that was, with alleged ties to everything from weapons smuggling to human trafficking. Victor found me still staring at my phone, rain soaking through my jacket. Miss Mia, he said, opening the car door with one hand while holding an umbrella with the other. You're going to catch cold. His expression revealed nothing, but something in his eyes suggested he knew exactly what I'd discovered. The drive to the Alexandrov mansion passed in a blur. My mind raced through every interaction, every strange occurrence I'd witnessed over the past weeks. The late-night meetings, the security, the way people deferred to David. It all suddenly made terrible sense. Leo was waiting at the door when we arrived, bouncing with excitement. Dad's home early, he announced, pulling me inside with the innocent enthusiasm only a child could maintain in a house built on crime. He wants to have dinner with us. He's hardly ever home for dinner. David stood in the hallway, impeccably dressed as always, a rare smile softening his features as he watched his son's excitement. That smile faltered when he saw my face, understanding immediately passing between us. He knew that I knew. Leo, why don't you show Irina your new story while I speak with Miss Mia? David suggested, his tone light but his eyes serious. Leo hesitated, his perceptiveness once again surprising me, before nodding and disappearing toward the kitchen with Irina. You saw the news, David stated once we were alone in his study. Not a question. He didn't bother denying it, and somehow that honesty was more terrifying than any lie would have been. I wondered when this day would come. You're too intelligent not to have figured it out eventually. Human trafficking, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. The article said you're involved in human trafficking. My voice didn't shake, which surprised me. Perhaps some part of me had known all along, had been willfully blind because I'd grown attached to Leo. "The article is wrong," David replied, his voice tight. "I've done many things I'm not proud of, but trafficking humans has never been one of them. My organization has strict codes. We don't touch drugs, we don't exploit women or children, and we don't engage in human trafficking." I wanted to believe him, needed to for Leo's sake, but the evidence seemed overwhelming. "Then why are you under investigation? Why did witnesses disappear?" I challenged, crossing my arms to hide my trembling hands. The stakes of this conversation felt impossibly high. "Politics within our world," David said simply. "The Korovan family wants my territory. They plant stories, bribe officials, make accusations. It's easier to bring down a rival with law enforcement than with bullets." His candor was jarring, this casual admission of a criminal empire. A phone rang somewhere in the room, not the obvious one on his desk, but something hidden. David's expression changed, the mask of civility slipping for just a second to reveal something cold and dangerous beneath. "Excuse me," he said, moving to a bookshelf and retrieving a phone from behind a leather-bound volume. The conversation was brief, in Russian, but I didn't need to understand the words to recognize the tension in his shoulders, the subtle shift in his demeanor. When he turned back to me, his face was grim. "You need to leave, now. Not just this house, the city, tonight." "What? I can't just—" I started, but he cut me off, moving to his desk and removing an envelope from a locked drawer. He handed it to me, and the weight of it suggested cash, a lot of it. "The Korovans know about you. They've been watching the house, watching you. They think you're important to me." My mind raced, trying to process what he was saying. "Because I teach Leo? But that's ridiculous, I'm just his tutor." Even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The way David looked at me sometimes, the conversations that lingered longer than necessary, there was something else growing between us, unacknowledged, but undeniably there. "Victor will take you to pack essentials, nothing more. You'll be driven to my property in the mountains. It's remote, defensible. Leo is already being moved there as we speak." The efficiency with which he dismantled lives was chilling, a reminder of exactly who I was dealing with. "My classes, my job," I protested weakly, but David shook his head, cutting me off again. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the faint scar along his jawline I'd never noticed before. For one breathless moment, I thought he might touch me. "They tried to grab a student from your university this morning, thinking it was you. She had similar coloring, similar build." His voice was gentle now, almost apologetic. "She's in the hospital. You won't be, because you'll be gone before they try again." The reality of the situation finally hit me with full force. This wasn't a movie, wasn't a game. People were getting hurt, and I could be next, all because I'd helped a lost boy find his way home. "What about Leo?" I asked, my voice small. "He's already lost his mother. If something happens to me too, nothing will happen to either of you if you follow my instructions exactly," David promised, his eyes intense. The certainty in his voice was somehow reassuring despite everything. "Pack light. Victor's waiting. I'll join you at the mountain house tomorrow once I've handled things here." The mountain property wasn't what I expected, not the fortress or compound I'd imagined, but a sprawling log cabin nestled among pine trees, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering views of snow-capped peaks. Leo was already there, excited by the unexpected vacation, as Irina had explained it to him. "We'll build a snowman tomorrow," he declared, showing me to my room with the proud air of a host. "And Dad's coming too. He never takes vacations." His innocence was heartbreaking. He had no idea we were hiding, running from people who wanted to hurt us to get to his father. My room was beautiful, rustic luxury with a stone fireplace and hand-woven rugs, but the subtle security features didn't escape my notice. Reinforced windows, the keypad by the door, the men patrolling the perimeter I could see through the glass. This was a safe house disguised as a retreat. Snow began falling as evening approached, fat flakes drifting past my window. I sat with Leo in the great room, helping him with a puzzle while Irina prepared dinner. For a moment, it almost felt normal, peaceful, if I could ignore the armed guards and the circumstances that brought us here. "My mom liked the snow," Leo said suddenly, fitting a piece into place. "Dad says she used to make snow angels and laugh when he told her it wasn't dignified." He looked up at me with those serious eyes. "Do you think it's undignified to make snow angels?" The question caught me off guard. This glimpse into a David I hadn't seen, a man who loved a woman who made snow angels, who remembered her laughter. "I think snow angels are perfectly dignified," I replied, swallowing against the tightness in my throat. Maybe we could make some together tomorrow. Night fell quickly in the mountains, and with it came a storm that howled around the eaves of the cabin. Leo had gone to bed, and I sat by the fire with a book I couldn't concentrate on, jumping at every sound. Where was David? Had something happened in the city? The security system chimed, and my heart leapt to my throat before Irina's calm voice called out, "It's the boss." David entered on a gust of cold air, snow dusting his dark coat, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. His eyes found mine immediately, relief passing over his features before he schooled his expression. "Everything is secure," he said after checking on a sleeping Leo. We sat in the kitchen, mugs of tea growing cold between us as he explained. "The Korovans have been dealt with. The immediate threat is neutralized. You should be able to return to your life in a few days." I studied his face in the dim light, the shadows under his eyes, the tension around his mouth. "At what cost?" I asked quietly. "What did you have to do to neutralize the threat?" I needed to know exactly what kind of man I was involved with, what kind of world I'd stumbled into. David was silent for a long moment. "Less than you fear, more than I wanted," he finally said, his voice heavy. "I made a deal. Part of my territory for peace. No bloodshed this time." The last words hung between us. This time, a reminder of blood spilled in the past, potentially in the future. "I want to show you something," he said suddenly, standing and motioning for me to follow. He led me to his study, unlocked a hidden safe behind a painting. Cliché but effective. Inside was a folder, which he handed to me. My exit strategy. Been working on it for 3 years. After Leo's mother died, I realized I needed to find a way out. The documents detailed a legitimate business empire. Real estate holdings, investment portfolios, technology startups, all separate from his criminal enterprises. Shell companies being slowly disentangled, assets moved through channels that couldn't be traced back to their origins. A masterclass in laundering not just money, but an entire life. 2 more years, David explained, watching me scan the pages. That's what I need to complete the transition. To walk away without leaving loose ends that would endanger Leo, or me. His hands moved restlessly, the only outward sign of his internal struggle. I never intended anyone else to be involved. I closed the folder, processing what this meant. And Leo? Does he know any of this? What his father really does? I thought of the solemn little boy who spoke too formally, who noticed too much. Children absorbed more than adults realized. What had he absorbed growing up in this world? He knows I'm not like other fathers, that there are rules he must follow for safety. But the details? David shook his head. I've tried to protect him from that knowledge for as long as possible. Perhaps that was selfish. Perhaps he should have been prepared. Snow continued to fall outside, insulating us from the world in a blanket of white silence. In this moment, in this place, the choice before me seemed both impossible and inevitable. I could walk away once the danger passed, return to my ordinary life of classes and library shifts, pretend none of this had happened. I care about Leo, I said finally, meeting David's eyes. And despite everything, what you are, what you've done, I care about you too. But I need to know that you're serious about leaving this life behind, that Leo will have a chance at something normal. David's expression softened, years of hardness momentarily falling away. The day you brought Leo home, I was negotiating a deal that would have expanded my operation into Chicago. That night, I called it off. Something shifted when I saw my son holding your hand, looking at you like you were his salvation. Morning came with cleared skies and a world transformed by snow. Leo was ecstatic, racing outside in his winter gear before breakfast was properly finished. David and I watched from the porch as he attempted to build a snowman alone, his small figure determined against the vast white landscape. "What happens now?" I asked, not looking at David but feeling his presence beside me, solid and warm despite the cold air. "After we go back to the city? After the danger is truly gone?" The question encompassed everything. Leo's tutoring, my involvement with them both, the feelings none of us had named aloud. "That depends on you," David replied, his voice carefully neutral. "I can set you up anywhere. New identity, new start, far from me and my complications, or..." He trailed off, leaving the alternative hanging between us like the crystallized breath in the cold mountain air. I thought of my life before, the cramped apartment, the struggling through classes, the quiet loneliness that had settled into my bones long before I found a lost boy in the library. I thought of Leo's face when he saw me each session, of the way David looked at me when he thought I wouldn't notice. Or I could stay, I finished for him, finally turning to meet his gaze. Help Leo with more than just his reading. Maybe help his father remember who he wanted to be before life forced his hand. It wasn't a decision I would have imagined making 3 weeks ago, but then I couldn't have imagined any of this. David reached for my hand, his touch gentle despite the strength I knew those hands possessed. It won't be easy, he warned. The transition out will be complicated, dangerous at times. There will be people who don't want me to leave, who will see it as weakness to exploit. But with you, I think I can become the man Leo deserves as a father. We watched as Leo flopped backward into the pristine snow, arms and legs sweeping to create the perfect snow angel his mother would have approved of. In that moment, I made my choice, not just for the lost boy who had found his way into my heart, but for myself, and for the complicated man beside me who was fighting to find his way back to something like redemption. That night, after Leo had fallen asleep, I found David in his study reviewing security reports. The blue light of his laptop illuminated the scars on his knuckles I'd never noticed before, physical reminders of the violence that had shaped him. When he looked up, vulnerability replaced his usual guardedness, a glimpse behind the armor he'd worn for decades. The hardest part isn't leaving the business, he confessed, closing the laptop with a quiet click. It's believing I deserve what comes after, a normal life, peace, someone like you. His voice caught slightly on those last words, the admission clearly costing him something. Men like me don't usually get second chances, especially not with women who see us clearly and stay anyway. Thank you all for following this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is what keeps me creating these stories for you.